everyone. This is John Ruby. Thank you for joining us today. I am from GCOM Worldwide. Also, I work hand in hand with Visual Q. Welcome to today's webinar on agent performance and gamification, featuring the latest research and interpretation from Benchmark Portal. This webinar is also sponsored by Visual Q. And then next up will be our speakers today is Bruce Belfiore, CEO of Benchmark Portal, and Dan Handy, President of Visual Q. Bruce will be speaking to us today about the results recently completed researched on agent engagement and gamification. He will then hand things off to Dan, who will discuss ways that you as a manager can leverage this information and bring real results to your contact center operation. With that, I hand things over to Bruce. Bruce, you're up.
Thank you very much, John, and thank you to Visual Q for sponsoring this on a very important topic. I'm delighted to share our most recent study on agent engagement and gamification from Benchmark Portal Research. In fact, it's hot off the presses, and it contains some results that may surprise you. The survey was aimed at contact center managers, directors, and VPs, so it's a good mirror of the audience we have on this webinar. In fact, I think there's probably many respondents who are in attendance, so welcome. I'll give you the results of management concerns about agent performance and interpret the feedback that we received on gamification. In essence, there are 5 major takeaways that emerged from the research, and I'll go through those now. But before I go into the research results, let me just define terms so that we come out of the gate all together. By agent performance, we mean measurable elements of behavior and the results of that behavior. And these include things that can be put on a metrics dashboard in black and white, things like adherence, talk time, calls per agent per hour, attendance, quality scores, customer satisfaction surveys that are traceable to individual agents, etc. So the ability to track agent performance has really gotten much better over the last decade. Though I still find a lot of centers lag in their ability to do this because they just don't have the technology that's needed. I mean, 20 years ago, we couldn't even dream about doing a lot of the things that can be done today. So that's what we mean when we talk about agent performance. It's measurable elements of behavior and the results of that behavior. By gamification, we mean a whole bunch of ways to make achieving high performance more fun and engrossing for the agents, to make and keep them engaged and competing with themselves and or with their colleagues to attain the best performance figures on metrics like the ones I just mentioned. Now, this can involve prizes, points toward rewards, cash bonuses, or privileges of different types, like scheduling preferences or some hours of paid time off, etc. And some of the rewards actually can be very low cost and be little badges and things like that, and they'll involve mainly bragging rights. I'll let Dan talk more about this when he comes on, because you can get pretty creative with all these things. But the important thing that I've seen time and again is that what you do has to be seen as attractive to your audience, with the agents themselves. So you have to take into account who they are, the age groups, et cetera, et cetera. You need something that's going to motivate them and really keeps them engaged. That's what we're talking about. So the reason this is important is because agent performance remains just a huge problem for managers. Again, after all these years, managers, by and large, are really not happy campers on this issue. In our research survey, we asked the question, how would you rate your center's need for increased agent performance and engagement? Almost 3 out of 5 rated it's extremely important, while another third said it was important. So this is our first major takeaway. Fully 90% find this a major issue for them. That's a huge number. Only 1 out of 10 did not rate this highly. So these are pretty overwhelming numbers. which underline that agent performance is a big concern. I'm sure it's a big concern for many of you sitting there in the audience. So, question, why? Well, here's one reason why, and this is our second takeaway. What people are currently using is disappointing them. Most managers are not thrilled with the results obtained from their agent reward system. And only 30% feel the reward system rates a 4 or a 5 in terms of effectiveness. The rest, which is a whopping 7 out of 10, are neutral or unhappy with the effectiveness of their system. So over 1 out of 4 are very dissatisfied with their reward system. So things aren't lining up. Things aren't working, banging on all cylinders the way they should. This slide drills down on some more of this. And while 55% of the respondents say their reward system is directly connected to agent performance on metrics, so it's working for them or not, 12% are not. And almost a third just don't have a reward system at all. And thus are probably missing out on major ways to enhance the agent performance they are so concerned about. But if you find yourself in this position, you're in good company. There's a lot of others out there in the same place. The important thing is not to stay there, but to find ways to actually enhance performance through appropriate reward system. So let me add a little fuel to the fire here and touch another nerve for most contact center managers, including many of you probably. And that has to do with agent turnover. So high turnover is really a big problem in our sector. There are many contributing factors, but when agents are not engaged, it's clearly worse. Reps who are happy and motivated and having some fun are more likely to stay. Those who are not are more likely to leave. And we at Benchmark Portal have been tracking turnover in contact centers for 2 decades. As you can see, we came out of the Great Recession years of 2008, 2012, during which time people were just happy to have a job, basically. Things have gotten quickly worse on the turnover front because of the strong economy. The economy, let's face it, is both our friend and our enemy. It adds to business, which is a great thing, but it also increases the opportunities for our precious employees to jump ship after we train them. The key to avoiding the turnover trap is to have satisfied, motivated workers that actually look forward to coming to work at your center. That's what you want, your center. Okay, so let's bring things back to performance and results and what's needed to ensure that we can get them. The main thing is metrics. It's no surprise here. You can only manage what you measure. And you have to have software systems that measure the metrics reliably so that everyone trusts them. When you have that, you have the ingredients for accountability, you have the ingredients for competition, you have the raw material for some fun in the center as people work to improve their performance. As you can see here, a third takeaway is that respondents overwhelmingly feel that having software that provides them with real-time feedback on metrics, right down to the agent and team levels, would help them manage better. Only about 1 in 4 have this kind of software already. And another important point, assuming the metrics are available to the individual agent, the agents themselves have the information they need to see where they need improvement. That is, the opportunity for self-management by agent goes way up by having this information. Information is common. That has positive impacts on engagement, empowerment, and self-directed performance improvements. So it's really a big issue here. The next major takeaway is that gamification, which can help agent empowerment and engagement, etc., is still little understood and underutilized in our industry, despite its ability to actually bring good results. We've seen time and again that our industry tends to adopt new things slowly, even when experience indicates that a lot can. So that means that there's huge opportunities that are being missed by a lot of managers. So gamification has had a slow but steady rise. If you look at these results, fewer than 1 in 5 even tried, and 1 in 4 is not even sure quite what it is. And if you're on the call now and you fall in that category, that's fine. You're doing the right thing. You're finding out about it to see if it's the best thing for you or not. We know that from experience, that Dan will express shortly, gamification has the potential of improving performance by double digits when it's implemented properly. Very important. So that brings us to the fifth and final takeaway from the research. That is that managers who are looking to adopt gamification software are looking for multiple benefits and functionalities from the software, and you should too. They want to strip out the manual effort and errors that come from do-it-yourself spreadsheet gamification, which was the old way of doing it. And I've seen how powerful, but also how painful that spreadsheet gamification can be. Keeping track of a ton of metrics on a spreadsheet. And when asked about the major functionalities that gaming software can bring to the table, which involve agent performance dashboards, competitive reporting elements and comparison of peoples and teams, and reward and recognition elements. When asked about these, the vast majority wants it all. 1 in 10 feels that agent performance dashboard alone is most compatible with their center's needs, and smaller percentages point to competitive elements or reward and recognition elements only. But both say, I'd like it all. Okay. So in summary, what the research tells us is that agent performance is still a major issue pain point for contact center. The current reward systems are not living up to expectations. They oftentimes disappoint. The metrics are needed right down to the agent level. In other words, having metrics at the call center level are very good for certain things like benchmarking against other call centers. But in terms of the agent engagement component and the agent accountability component, really need it down to the agent level. There's a lack of knowledge of performance enhancement systems and gamification. There's still not a lot of experience in this area on the part of a lot of people, regardless of the fact that it can be very powerful. So there are a lot of opportunities to improve. So that's what the research has told us, and I'm a big believer that research on pain points and problems should not just sit there, they should lead managers toward actual solutions that move them toward excellence. So with that, I'd like to turn things over to Dan to talk about what the leading edge of agent engagement through gamification looks like. So now what I'll do is I'll turn things over to him. He'll take control of the screen.
Thanks, Bruce. Really appreciate you sharing all those insights and research that you guys have done. I know there are a couple of people saying that they had a hard time hearing the volume. We're going to try to make some adjustments and make sure that everybody can hear okay. So hopefully that it's coming through clearly and you can hear. Just as a quick background on myself, I know what it's like to run a contact center. For 10 years was in charge of a web hosting company. It was pretty big. And at one point we had 20,000 technical support issues coming in on a daily basis. And so we had a large contact center that we had to manage. And I know all the challenges that come with that and keeping everybody on the same page and creating in performance and engagement and all of that. So we'd love to share with you from us at Visual Q and our QFit product, the learnings that we've gotten, because I think that, as Bruce alluded to, the workforce has changed significantly and it's ever changing. And as you can see, as the economy improves and there are so many opportunities, it becomes incredibly important to create a work environment that is engaging and allows people to perform and self-manage. And so the ultimate goal really is all around agent performance and engagement. If that's the reason why you would want to implement gamification principles or other systems. And as you look at the market today, people use different systems to try to motivate, engage employees, and create the performance. And the three systems that we see used a lot are performance dashboard to help kind of look at numbers and performance, as well as gamification tools around leaderboards and points and everything that we're going to talk about, and rewards and recognition systems to be able to give rewards to people. And so I think that all of these things come together. But what we read the other day in this study by Mordor Intelligence, it says that so many companies make mistakes when they're trying to do gamification or reward systems, and that lack of implementing it properly leads to them not really incentivizing the right behaviors and really not getting the benefits out of it. And we had talked about in this particular session that we wanted to try to help show you how you could actually get significantly better performance and engagement out of your employees, including as much as a 25% increase in performance, which would be amazing, right? So we're going to talk about what are the principles that you need to follow to be able to do that. And it all starts with behavioral science. So let's talk about this real quick first. If you want people to be responsible and accountable for their performance, then there are four important principles for every single job, not just an agent in a contact center, but really every kind of job requires these four principles. So here's the science that goes into this, okay? First of all, expectations, okay? For any person, any worker in any kind of job, they need to understand clearly what's expected out of them on a daily basis. And so think about it in your organization. Do people clearly know exactly what is expected of them? Then after that, do you measure against that expectation? Do you have a measurement? What KPIs can you look at to be able to verify and validate if those expectations are being met? Then, okay, let's say we have expectations and we have measurement. Is the individual worker aware of those measurements and those expectations? They need to have that awareness so that they can adjust and meet those expectations. And then lastly, transparency. So create transparency so that that things aren't hidden, but that they're readily apparent. We have on the right-hand side, we have this example of the speed limit sign where it shows you your speed. Studies have shown that those speed limit signs are effective over 80% of the time to get people to slow down to the speed limit without issuing a ticket and without a policeman being on the streets at that time. So those are the principles of expectations, measurement, awareness, transparency. I can give you a quick example. There was a startup company that I was helping a couple of years ago, and they had grown really fast. And I was looking at their support department, and they had a 2-hour response time on the support department. So I sat down with that department, and I looked at things, and I said, do you guys realize that, 2 hours average response time? And then we went through and said, look, the expectation is to have this be minutes, not hours. And so we talked about what we could do and how we were going to measure it and where they could see what the response time was. Within 3 days, the average response time was under 10 minutes. And then within a week, it was under 2 minutes. And that was without adding more staff to that department. It was just the expectations, measurement, awareness, and transparency. So this is a principle that can work really well. Now, on top of this behavioral science, then what's becoming more and more popular in today's workforce is to utilize game theory and gamification principles to continue to layer on top of the behavior science and to have even further methods to help incentivize the proper behaviors that you want in your contact center or in your organization. So let's talk about those best practices of the gamification and game theory so that you can maximize your employee engagement and performance. Because it's not just enough to kind of throw a spin the wheel thing in there or a leaderboard, individual leaderboard. You need to be able to follow these principles. So we're going to run through some of our best practice findings here, so that as you implement gamification within your company, you can make sure that you do it in a productive way. So first of all, let's talk about measurement. So we just talked about this. So agents need to be measured on all the important KPIs. One mistake sometimes is made is that there's only emphasis put on one particular KPI. So average handle time or total sales numbers or whatever. That is important, and you will have a most important metric, but it's important to have a holistic view of performance so that people don't try to emphasize only on one metric at the detriment to other metrics. So make sure you have a comprehensive view of a person's performance. Second of all, here is feedback. So once again, we talked about getting the data back to the agents or to the employees themselves. So how often do they see it? Is this something they see once a week? Is it something they don't see at all, but their supervisors and managers come and talk to them? Or is it something that they see once a day for the previous day? How often do they see it? And optimal, obviously, would be real-time continuous feedback to get the maximum amount of benefit about it, out of all of the things that you're doing. The next is a point system. So standard game theory, any game that you play usually has a point system, and points are a reflection of how you're doing in the game, right? So and I've seen people have gamification within their company, but the points aren't based on their performance KPIs. They're based on, oh, well, did you take this training, or did you do this other thing that we asked you to do? And they give out points for that. Make sure your points are tied to your performance KPIs and weighted to those things that are of greatest importance to you as an organization. So for like CSAT scores or whatever it is, you want to tie your point system to that. So then it's a reflection of their work effort. Leaderboards. Leaderboards are important, and you want to create some friendly competition, but leaderboards need to make sure that they're visible to agents at all times. Sometimes a leaderboard wallboard gets thrown up in the break room. Well, that's great, except for then the agents only see it when they're on break. So make sure that your leaderboards are shown, and also don't miss out on the opportunity to create leaderboards for all of your KPIs, not just like one individual important one, but all of them. Next are achievements. So this is very common game theory. You'd see this in nearly every mobile game that maybe you've played on your phone, is like a daily achievement kind of thing. It helps us, push us to doing things every day that are important. So you can set up extra incentive for agents for reaching particular metrics and achievements. And so achievements are always metric based. And so maybe you want your outbound salespeople to try to have a goal of making 100 calls in a day. Well, you could set up an achievement for that. So next we look at rewards. So rewards get tricky, and everybody offers rewards, but in many times, and I've experienced this in the past myself, I even had a reward system where the rewards were divvied out by management and done, every week you got to think about, well, who deserves what, and I'll give this to that person. So the more you can tie your rewards to a direct result of their performance and productivity, the better you will incentivize the behavior. So they don't feel like it's like, well, I'm just not liked by my manager, so that's why I don't get rewarded as much. So make sure that those rewards are as objective as possible and tied to actual KPIs. Then competition. So the primary competition you want in your center is an individual employee trying to compete against his own individual performance to be able to improve his or her performance on a daily basis. And then, of course, you want friendly competition across individuals and teams and all of that. but make sure that the primary competition is somebody trying to improve their own performance. Lastly, we talk about awards. And so awards are usually given out by supervisors, managers, or fellow employees to help recognize the efforts and behaviors of others. And those are done on an individual basis. And those can be fun. You can give fun names to them, and is a status of recognition. So these are a lot of standard game mechanics and game theories that you need to just make sure that you deploy them correctly. So I'd love to just share with you really fast a piece of software that we built to try to implement all of these principles in your organization. But you can start to implement these principles immediately even without a piece of software by piecing things together yourself. But here's some examples. So we took a look at the contact centers and in all of the different reports and things that come out and try to combine them all into one simple to view area for an agent so that they can immediately assess their own performance. And we put this into a little application that runs on the agent's desktop. So the things that we just talked about, you can see, here's an example of how you'd be able to implement these gamification elements. We have this little taskbar at the very top that runs on an agent's desktop that shows them at all times real-time continuous feedback of how they're doing on everything. And then you can see when they click on that taskbar, then they get this application window that pops up, and they can see more detailed information. So we talked about all the different things that can help drive performance. Well, look, here we go, gamification. Okay, so we've got points that are tied to their KPIs and how they're performing. We've got leaderboards. We've got achievements that they can do. As far as rewards and recognition systems go, we've got awards that they can get given out. We got coins and things that they can use for redeeming rewards and getting prizes. And there's even a store where they can go in and get, whether it's even T-shirts or or anything. Keep in mind, and let me give this quick tip. When it comes to rewards, we found 3 types of rewards that are effective. Number 1 is straight up cash, a gift card, something that people just can then spend on anything that they like. Number 2 can be rewards within the company, whether it's company swag, sometimes a reserved parking spot or an extra day off or things like that can be very motivating to people. And then number 3 that we like to recommend to people are things to consider that might be splurge items, maybe like the latest iPhone or something that they wouldn't normally be able to spend in their individual budget, but they would love to work towards and to be able to accomplish that. So you can see how with reward systems, we've incorporated that in here. And then lastly, we talked about the performance dashboard and how the person needs to understand how they're performing. Now, with QFit, we use our patented software to be able to represent colors or data with colors, symbols, and everything so that an agent can assess it within seconds of how they're performing on everything. But you can figure out ways to be able to do that with your employees to help them, let them know how they're performing. And then, of course, this is all customized. And in fact, one thing that we do is you want to customize the KPIs and what they're measured and the benchmarks by team, because from one team to the next, what is expected out of them is different as compared to from one team to another. So being able to change that from one team to the next is important. And of course, what else would be important would be for the supervisors and managers to be able to have that same kind of view of their team. So what if they could have a view where they knew exactly how people were performing and where they stood? They could spend a lot less time trying to sort through reports, and they could spend more time doing coaching, which is what you want your supervisors and managers really doing. And so with the system we built, we're trying to put the supervisors and agents on the same page. We're being able to look at the same things and be able to have really meaningful coaching sessions, be able to look at performance, over time also on a calendar and all of that. It can be important to finding trends and be able to maximize performance and engagement. So if you could, implement these principles of gamification and behavioral science into your organization, it can actually have a dramatic effect on improvement. I gave you the example, a simple example of a support department customer service where they went from a 2-hour average response time to a 2-minute average response time. But let me give you a few other examples of people that we've worked with and the results that they're seeing from being able to implement these principles of gamification. So this is a large publicly traded hotel brand that has implemented these principles in an inbound customer service center. In this particular service center, they were really struggling with schedule adherence and break adherence. And they saw an immediate increase in an improvement of 49% in the activity adherence through these principles, which helped result in an overall improved occupancy rate of over 8%, which is tremendous for them. Here's another little case study of a publicly traded e-commerce retailer with inbound customer service. They, in particular, they were struggling with after call work as they would see sometimes long wrap times after a call of agents taking notes. So they wanted to really improve that. Well, by showing them their performance, what's expected, and utilizing these gamification principles, they immediately saw a 26% reduction in that after call work. And they also saw an improvement in agent turnover, which is another principle that we talked about that's so important, because now agents understood where they stand and what was expected of them, and they could reach and strive to perform on those things. Lastly, in this last example, there is an outbound lead generation company, and their ultimate measure of success was leads per hour. How many leads per hour is each agent generating? So they actually implemented our software and wanted to see the difference in the team, and so they put it on part of their team, on half of their team, and those agents that utilized those gamification principles had a 28% higher leads per hour. So you may think, you know what, now we're already running at max capacity of what people can do. But just think about it for a second. Like, if your people could know at all times what's expected out of them and how they're pacing, how they're performing, could they improve that productivity? I liken it to back in the Bluehost days when we were working with our agents. I liken it to collecting spare change, because when you're aware of things, then you shorten up a call by a minute here, or you shorten down your after call work by 30 seconds there, or you jump back into availability just a little bit quicker here. When you do that all day long, it's like collecting that spare change. And when you add it all up together, suddenly it's something significant and something that you can get excited about. So at this time, we wanted to open up the forum here for some questions, and also just let you know, if you have further questions for us at any point, there's an email address here that jruby@gcomworldwide.com, where you would be able to ask us any additional questions, as well as follow up with us if you would like a demo of a software or anything else that would like to happen. But we'll go ahead and look at some questions that people are posting. If you have a question, at the bottom of your application, there is a section that says Q&A. You should be able to click on that and submit a question, and we'll go through some of those now. So Bruce, I don't know if there's any questions that you want to pull up from there.
Yes. So thank you very much, Dan. That was great exposition. And we do have a question here, and actually we're in good time too, because we promised our audience that we have a 3/4 of an hour webinar, and we're in very good time to do that. So, well done. Question here, is competition always a good thing with gamification? Have you seen situations in which it's best to keep things at an individual level? I'll take a first whack at that, and I'd say that, first of all, this question came before Dan underlined the fact that people should be competing against their own performance for the most part. That's the most important thing. However, I would add to that the culture of the center is extremely important to take into account. And if the culture of the center is one that would react badly to, a lot of competition or people finding out what other people's metrics are, et cetera, then you have to take that into account. It doesn't mean that you have to settle for it forever, because new people are coming in, the younger generation looks at these things differently, et cetera, but you want to make sure that you don't turn what should be a real plus into a disaster by all of a sudden changing a center in which things were held very close to the vest into something where everybody sees everybody else's metrics. So in most cases, it's not going to be a problem. In fact, in most cases, you're going to be able to make the transition very easily. But think about it. Make sure that transition planning is given the time, you give it the time necessary, so that you can make sure that moving over to maybe a more open type of situation where people have other people's information is okay. One of the things, in fact, that you can do is make sure old timers, if you're going to be introducing this, have a couple of months, okay, to get up to speed on some things, the goals that you're setting, before you actually go public with everything. So that has worked. In other words, explaining to people why, explaining the benefits, showing them how they're actually going to, have a more fun place, a better place as a result of it. But saying, okay, we're going to give you a couple months to get up to speed, and we'll give you coaching necessary to do that. So those are my thoughts there. Dan, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, just to add real quickly. So one of the things that I did at our past company was we actually utilized personality testing too. And what we realized is that you definitely have your high A people, your people that are super competitive, that really want to compete all the time and try to be the best. But you also realize that you have people that are low A people, that are more collaborative and that a highly competitive environment can be somewhat of a detriment to. So that's why we're talking about this balance, where the primary competition centers around the individual themselves, but then you can layer in these other friendly competitions for those who really strive off of the competitive. You just don't want everything to be this cutthroat competitive environment of like, man, if I'm not on the leaderboard, I'm toast. So it's just that nice balance that you can generate to appeal to those who are both very competitive and those who aren't as competitive.
Very good. Okay, here's another one. What sort of ROIs do people get from gamification? Dan, can you shed some light on that?
Yeah, so ROI, that's an awesome question. I mean, when you look at a contact center, and I know exactly how this goes, okay? So imagine we were paying our people $15 an hour plus benefits, and our average revenue per hosting subscriber was only $10. So you can imagine one call from a customer really eats into our profitability. So that's why you want to look at these kind of things to try to improve efficiency. So think about it this way. As you use gamification and you show people's performance, you can get them to perform at a higher level. So if you can get more occupancy out of it, more utilization, if they can do more calls per hour, all of those things will result in you being able to save money. What's the number one cost in your contact center? It's people by the far, right? So if everybody could take 2 more calls per day or 5 more calls per day, or if everyone was their occupancy numbers and utilization numbers went up, then you could do the same amount of volume with a little bit less people. Or if you're growing, then you could hire a few less people as you're growing, and you could have more volume per person. Then, on our website, we even put a little calculator. You can figure it out yourself. Well, gosh, if I got 10% more productivity out of everybody, and then you could calculate that and look at what does a fully burdened person cost, and then you could calculate that in terms of the cost savings from a people perspective. And since that's your largest cost, it usually adds up to quite a bit. So just look at percent increase in productivity, and then that's a good metric to gauge in how much a person costs you, and because if then you can figure out your average cost savings that you could expect from this kind of thing. So it can actually make a huge difference. I mean, like in that last example I gave you, 28% higher leads per hour. What is that worth to you? You know, how many? That's like hiring a bunch more people, for free. So yeah, that's a good way to calculate.
Okay, so do you have any research on the types of rewards that are most popular, such as gift cards or cash better than merchandise? Dan?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So great. So let's just review that really quick, because that's super. In the past, I used a reward system, a piece of software where they had a giant store with everything under the sun, so you could even get slippers or a toaster or whatever. But let's just talk about that real quick. What really motivates people are three types of things. Okay. One is just straight up cash, because I can use that on anything, right? My car broke down on the way to work, I got enough points at work that I can redeem for a $50 gift card. I can use that to, fix my car. So cash and gift cards are definitely a motivator in every center that we see. Right. Number two, though, it's surprising to me how internally to the company, there are things that really motivate people, whether it's cool swag, whether it's your own products, whether it's a free parking space or a reserved parking space or something like that. So don't discount how rewarding or motivating some internal things can be, and some of which may not even cost you any cash. So you can, and then lastly, like we talked about, are those splurge items. And there's usually not that many that are really motivating to people. We recommend that you do a little poll inside your center to see what are those motivating things for people. And because most of these employees live on a month-to-month kind of budget, and so they don't have budget for splurge items, whether it's a PlayStation or the latest iPhone or Galaxy phone. So, but it's really not that many different things. So we recommend you do a poll with your people, and you kind of identify those 5 or 10 things that are really motivating and use those as rewards rather than just randomly throwing out stuff.
Right. On this one, Cheryl, who's the person who asked the question, I think the idea here is that more important than getting research of the whole industry, what Dan is saying is get research on your people. And that's really the best. Yes. That's great. Okay, one last question here. Gamification indicates a fun activity to participate in. How do you keep this viewed as a positive experience? I imagine we could say over time, keeping it fresh, I guess, probably what Ken is asking.
Yeah, that's an awesome question. And one of the things that I always felt like was a challenge in running a contact center is because there's calls constantly coming in and all of this information, and they're constantly busy in queue, answering one customer after another. I felt like there wasn't a lot of positive reinforcement back to the employees. And so that's what I love, like with an application like this, like in our particular application with that green color showing how well they're doing, like now there's a lot more positive feedback. So every day as I'm working and I see everything lit up green, I know I'm doing a great job, and I know, and I can get that positive reinforcement. And as my coins go up and I'm able to redeem it for things, then I know, then I'm getting these other rewards. And as I'm getting recognized for being on the leaderboard, all of these things, the fact of the matter is that in every center, they're already being measured on a whole bunch of things, but maybe they're not able to see that in a way that tells them that they're doing good and they're doing a great job. So just keeping it like that in terms of knowing every single day, hey, I've got my stuff green, I'm doing great. My supervisor has good things to say to me. Keep it really positive. They don't hear enough positivity on a daily basis. They mostly, usually hear from their supervisor when it's, negative something of like, hey, you got a bad, customer review here, or we need to fix this problem. So the more positivity that you can bring in your gamification systems of bringing positive feedback to them, the better. It really helps a lot. It goes a long ways.
Very good. Okay, thank you very much for that. I think with that, we will be bringing the webinar to a close. We've got a little bit over, but very good reason why. And so with that, Dan, thanks. And we'll turn things over to John Ruby to close things down.
Just close things up. All right, guys. Thank you very much, Dan and Bruce. Thank you, everyone, for joining. We really appreciate it. Just so you know, everyone that signed up will be getting an email with the audio as well as all the slides. And if you have any further questions, like Dan did mention, by all means, please email us. And again, the email is at the very end, jruby@gcomworldwide. And if it's any particular question, or if you want to have any additional demos for operations or people amongst your staff, please do not hesitate. And we really appreciate everyone joining us today. Thank you so much.